The more specific the question, the more specific the goal, the more specific your description of where you're heading, the more likely you are to get there, right? Like if you put in an address into your sat nav or GPS and you don't put the exact address, you're not going to get there. It simply won't know how to take you there. So without getting too much into the law of attraction thing, I don't mean it to become like metaphysical or anything, but it goes down to what I think Napoleon Hill spoke about in Outwitting the Devil, which is one of my all-time favorite books, because one of the tools of the devil that he describes in the book is, drifters, right? So the devil wants people to not have goals, to not think in specifics, and to basically just drift along in life. And that's how, the devil takes hold of their minds.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's very easy to get caught up into the drift of life, right? And, I'm a big UFC fan, and I've been a UFC fan for about 10 years, right? And before that, I was not, that's the only sport that I watch, right? And before that, I watched no sports. And I had very few extracurricular type of activities other than work and studying stuff related to work. And it's only, I'm in my 50s now, and it's only now when I finish my day at 5 or 6 o'clock, right? There are times when I am mentally drained. I'm getting older now, right? I'm mentally drained. And there's the option of doing some thinking work or maybe watching UFC, right? Where there's no thinking, right? None. And I'll sometimes default to UFC because my brain is taxed, right? And I'm clear that I just don't want to do any heavy lifting with my brain right now.
Yo, it's Igor. I want you to have my Amazon best-selling book for free for taking the time to listen to my podcast and to watch my YouTube videos. Now, I'm not only going to give you this book for free, but I'm going to throw in about $3.2 thousand in free bonuses. Now, if you want to get this book, please click the link in the description, or you can also go to igorsbook.com. And now, back to the podcast.
What's interesting, though, is that I think that I was really impacted a bunch of years back, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I was really impacted by a gentleman by the name of Tiago Fort. Okay. He wrote a book called Build a Second Brain. He has a course called Building a Second Brain. I found him, maybe it was even longer than 5 years ago, but it was a while back. I found him because I was doing research on personal knowledge management. And I came across one of his articles, and his article was insanely great. And he was pulling in stuff that I had taught, theory of constraints, but I didn't see the connections that he was putting together in this article. And I was kind of blown away by it. And so I ended up trading him some of my time for his time, because I told him, look, man, your stuff is great and has to get out there, but nobody's searching personal knowledge management. That's you got to meet people earlier on. And, I learned a lot from him. And one of the things that I learned from him is something that Richard Feynman used to do. And Richard Feynman, was a famous scientist, MIT mathematician. And he would always keep a dozen problems in his mind. And so there's a quote from one of his colleagues, and this is the quote from one of his colleagues on how Richard Feynman produced so many outstanding things. You have to keep a dozen of your favorite problems constantly present in your mind, although by and large they will be in a dormant state. Every time you hear or read a new trick or a new result, test it again against each of your 12 problems to see whether it helps. Every once in a while there'll be a hit, and people will say, "How did he do it? He must be a genius." In other words, Feynman's approach was to keep a list of the dozen of his favorite problems. These were fascinating open questions that he found himself returning to again and again in his research, right? And so you can't, in this day and age with the proliferation of information everywhere, and now with Chat GPT and just all these crazy advancements, it's so easy to lose yourself, just get swept up into the drift, right? And two, even
Yeah.
if you don't get swept up into the drift, to just not be able to manage the constant flows of information coming at you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so having like being clear the questions that you're trying to answer to grow your business, to be the questions that you have in your head overall, just bigger questions that are the things that you like allocate time to, makes going through information, processing stuff just a lot more clear about how to approach the day. And this is a total tangent, but something that I'd love to just bring up really quickly. So I did coach a lot of people early on online. I was one of the first online business coaches, and a lot of the stuff that I taught is kind of mainstream now, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of the stuff I taught was not stuff invented by me. It was stuff that I just got access to a lot earlier than most people in our market, I guess, because I worked for Accenture and Anderson Consulting and stuff. But one thing that I taught that never made it like popular, but is like one of the most important things that I taught, I felt. So I taught things like, build a business around your strength, and everybody knows that now, right? Like build processes and systems, and that your business is kind of broken up by just processes and systems and projects, and how do you kind of break those up? And those are all like standard stuff. But one thing that I did teach that I don't see being taught is a mistake that I think most entrepreneurs make when they first start out, or even, somewhat even after they've started out, and they might even be doing halfway decent. And that is that they build a business around their mythical self. That they, like, when they think about the business of their dreams, they're also thinking about themselves playing at some absurdly high level in that business of their dreams. And the truth is that personal change is really difficult. And so what I always did with my clients was like, let's get really clear about your flaws. Let's like what you like, what you don't like, what you can do, what you can't do, et cetera. And then let's design the business to be successful without you ever having to change, because the likelihood of you changing makes the likelihood of your business success a lot less. So we're going to just like design this business so it can be successful based on who you are right now. And so, I did that in my own business around my flaws and helped a lot of my clients. And I think that a lot of entrepreneurs don't really kind of recognize the fact that, it's their kingdom, they make the rules, and they can design this to make their flaws irrelevant and not have to focus on things that they're bad at. So like in our business, when I first started and I wrote those reports, I was writing those reports because each of those reports then released a program that I was going to coach and do live. I was going to do it one time live, and then from there, it would be a product that we would offer ongoingly. And the reason it was done that way is because I couldn't be trusted to complete a program on my own. Like I needed a crowd in order to disappoint, because if I didn't, I would like never get it done. So my business was designed so that how could like a perfectionist / procrastinator who would get courses done on their own, like be forced to get courses done in a way that like keeps the business going. And so, and there's a lot of other examples, but I think that that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs get wrong. And, one of the things that they could get clear about, like in the questions that they ask themselves, is what specifically needs to change in this business for it to be a lot more successful if I don't change at all. And they would get some interesting answers, I'm sure, to that question.
Yeah. First off, I definitely don't see other people talk about this, and this is big because it can actually go not only into your business but into your personal life. Because I've seen this play out many times before, both in my personal life and business. But here's an example of this from my personal life, which is very simplistic, but it's so true. Basically, at one point, I realized I didn't want my wife to cook anymore. Not to say that she's bad at it. It's just it would take a lot of time,
Right.
and it would actually make her feel miserable because she would always have to be deciding what to cook, and then she would make it, and she would be worried, like, is it good, is it not? And she would always like be stressed out about it. So I said, let's bring someone else to do it. Eventually, it took me about 6 to 12 months or so, but she agreed, and we brought someone else to do it a couple of times a week. And what's interesting is that this person would prep the food, and I was when I wanted to eat, I had to take the food out and warm it up and eat it. Now, what I noticed is that I can only sustain up to 2 degrees of separation between the food and me. Otherwise, the system fails. So, example. So, let's say, I open the fridge and there's a few boxes, and there's, like, let's say there's potato and there's chicken. So, I take the potato and the chicken out, put it on the plate, put it in the microwave, warm it up,
Mhm.
done. Okay, I'm eating. But if there's ingredients that are in the fridge that I take out, put on the plate, and there's also something else that I need to, for example, cut. Like if there's like, if I wanted a salad or something, right? So I need to take a couple of things and ingredients and cut them up and put them in a bowl, etc. So the cutting and putting in a bowl, that doesn't work for me. So
Right.
anytime I needed to do that, I actually defaulted away from it and went for something that didn't require it. And so I realized that there can only be like up to 2 stages, which means taking the food and warming it. Right, I can't go take the food, cut the food, and warm it. Like that's not going to work. So there's one tiny little step in between success and failure, and then just I kind of said, well, I guess that's what I am. And then I taught the person who was cooking to prep the food in a way that didn't require me to cut anything or to do anything, and I became a much happier person as a result, because I wasn't frustrated anymore about having food that I couldn't eat because of my own flaw. And I think that's such a tremendous tip, because I see a lot of people get sucked into this positive thinking or motivational thinking, where they're
Mhm.
like, watch a YouTube video where Les Brown is giving a talk, and they're like, damn it, this is it. This is it. Tomorrow, I'm totally training for UFC or something. Like they're
Right.
like, I'm totally going to change all of my habits. I'm going to change my diet. I'm going to change my schedule. But you see, that ain't going to happen. There's a reason why you're acting this way. You've got habits that were formed over the years. You've got life circumstance that you can't just ignore. Like you say, okay, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym. But you know what, if you've got a newborn and you only go to bed at 3, you're not going to wake up at 5. It's not going to
Right.
happen. So being able to admit that to yourself, and structure your life and your business around taking your flaws and your strength into consideration, is an amazing thing.